Hello and welcome, my name is Amir, and in this video we're going to create a chat application. We would use React and WebSocket for the front end and WebSocket for the back end. So let's jump right into it. So here I will create a folder for the server part, and then I would go to that folder. Here I will initialize my server using npm init, and it would ask me a bunch of questions and I would say yes to all of them. Great. Now in the server I have a package.json, and the only packages that I need for this server part are HTTP and WebSocket. So let's install them as well. Great, now we have our server. I need to create a start as well, so I would say start. Okay, now if I go here and type npm start, this will run. Okay, so let's create our index.js in the server here. Great. Now in this file we would create our server and then create our WebSocket, and the WebSocket will listen to the connections. Let's first include WebSocket and HTTP in our application. Now we need to define a port for our application. Great. Now we are listening on port 8000. Now let's go and spin up the server. In order to do so, we would use the create server on the HTTP module. So here I have a server created from the http.create server. Now this server should listen to this port. So like this. Now that it's listening to this port, we can log to see if it's working fine or not. So like this. Now if I go here and run my application on the backend part, it's listening on port 8000. This can also be console.log. Now we need to initialize our WebSocket. We would do that by this. So we define a WebSocket server using this method on this WebSocket package. This WebSocket server receives an object of options, and in that object we can include the HTTP server that we want this WebSocket server to work on. So something like this. HTTP server is the server that we have defined here. Great, so now our WebSocket server is created. Then it should get the request from the users to connect to the WebSocket. That's the first thing that we need to cover. So we could say something like this. WebSocket server on request. If a request comes to this, run this function. The first thing that we need to do here is to differentiate between the requests that are coming from the clients and to know which client sent the request. So in order to do that, we would generate a unique ID for each request that comes. So I will have something like this, and this generate ID function that we will write now will create a unique ID for each request. This function takes the word ID and adds a random string to the end of that ID. Now in order to see if we get the correct ID, we can log that here. So we can say connection request from this. The next thing is that when a request comes to this WebSocket, we need to either accept it or deny it. For the time being, we want to accept whatever request that comes in our way. So we have something like this. We would create a connection and we would accept the request that is coming. In order to do so, we would add a null and the request.origin here. This means that accept all the requests that are coming from this origin. If we want to, filter out some of the requests, we can do it here using this accept method. Then in order to know about the connected users or connected clients to this WebSocket, we need to keep track of them. So here I would create another object called connected users like this. And as a connection happens, I would add that connection to the connected users object that I have up here. So like this. Connected users ID with the ID that we create here is the connection that we have. Now I have a list of user IDs with their connection here that we can broadcast the messages to. And I would have a log like this that say that the connection has been established here. So up to now, on each request, we create a connection. After that, the clients would type something and the message would come to the server, and then we need to broadcast it to the other users or to all the users that we have. So in order to do that, we can say for connection, on each message that is received, we need to run a function, and that function will receive the message from the user. First, we can log the message like so. We can say receive the message, and we expect the message to be in UTF-8 format. So we log it here, and then broadcast the message to all the clients that are connected. For all of the IDs, send UTF, the data that you received here, to that client. And that's it. We can also log what we have sent to the user here as well. And that's basically all about the WebSocket connection and receiving the message on the server part. Nothing more to be done here. I can save this. Now let's go to the front end part. So here I would create a folder, and then I will cd to that folder, and then create the React app. Okay, it's installed. We need to install the WebSocket here as well. Great, that one is done as well. Now let's go and create our React part. I don't need these, so let me close them, and let me see if it's installed. Yeah, I have WebSocket here installed. Okay, if I go to the source, I don't want these parts, and I can remove the vitals. And let's go to the app.js before I would save it here. And let's go to the app.js. Let's remove all of this with the test so that we see if it's working or not. And great, we have the test here. Okay, so in our server here, we get the message and broadcast it to all the users out there. But here in the front end, we need to know which of the messages we have sent, which of the messages our friend has sent, so to say. So in order to be able to differentiate between those two, we need to have some kind of a username for ourselves. So I would define the state to keep the username of each of the clients. I would use the state and import it here as well. Great. Now we need to know if the user has entered their username or not. If they have not, we need to ask them to enter their username. Otherwise, we can show them the chat window. So instead of this return, I would have something like this. I would have a class with an ID, and then I would ask if the username is present or not. If yes, show the chat, otherwise show the login. Let's go and see. Now it shows us the login because we are not logged in yet. So let's create two components for these two states that we have here. So I would go here, I would have a components, and inside that I have a chat.js and a login.js. Let's first go and write the login part. So I would have something like this, and the thing that we need to render is basically a form. So let's add that, div class form, and then div. Great, let's give it some space here. We need an input, and then we need a button. So the input should be something like this. Then when the input changes, we need to store the value. So I need a state for this input here as well, like this. Let's import use state. Great. Now we can use this login as the value of this input. And on change of this input, we can change the login. This. And it's auto formatting using the prettier. Great. So when the input changes, we get the value and set the login here. Then we need to have a button to submit the form. Well, by submitting the form, I mean setting the username and tell the app.js that the username has been set by the user. So I need a button here, call it login, and it would have an onClick function. With the onClick function, we would go to the app.js and set this username so that we can go to the chat. So if I go here, I can say something like this. When the click happens, set the username to the login, and the login is what the user has entered here. So I need to get this set username from the props and pass it here. So now that we have the login, instead of doing the login like this, we can have the component instead, like this, and I need to import the login here as well. Now that we have the login, we can send the set username function to it, and when the user logs in, this set user will be triggered. So let's save. Yeah, we get to error because we have not exported the login. Great, now it should go away. Let's go here, remove the logo as well, and go to our app. Okay, I need to have some CSS for this. So I would just copy and paste the CSS that I have. Now, this should be about it for the CSS part. Let's go back, and yes, I have the login and everything. Now, if I say, for example, Amir, and then login, I would go to the chat section. So the login is working fine. But the thing that I need to do is that when I press enter, the login works as well. Right now it's not working. So let's go here and to the login, and here we would have another function for on key pressed. So we have something like this. We would get the key, and if it's enter, we would set the username as we would do here. So let's go back here, and here I would press enter and I would go to the chat. Great. So we're done with the login, so we can close it for now. Let's focus on our chat. This chat is the most important part because it needs to provide the socket, create the socket and connect it to the backend and get the data and show it on the page. So first, let's go and import the socket. Yes, we would get this as socket from the WebSocket that we installed. Then we need to initialize it, just like we did on the backend that we created a socket. We create a socket here, and this socket is connected to this address, which is my local host, and the port 8000, which is the port that the server is listening to here. Great. Now we need to write the component. Great, so this is our component. It takes the username because, as I said, we need to differentiate between the messages that we send and the messages that the others send. So we need to get the username from the, of course, app and then use it here. Let's first focus on the part that we are typing a message. So just like the login that we had the state and then input, we would have the same. I would call it my message and then set message, and we're using the state, so we need to import it. Great. So let me give myself a little bit room here, and this is what we have. So I have a title with the username that I get to make sure that I'm getting the correct username. Then I would have a form with an input just like we had on the login, as I said before. And on change, we are setting the message. And by send, we can send the message. But for now, I have not included the functions to send the message. We just want to see if it's working. Let's go to our form and refresh and say an enter, and we get to chat. Yeah, it's not working because I have not included the chat component in the app. So here, just like we had the login form, we can have the chat component. So let's do this, and we need to include the chat as well in the imports. Great. Let's go to our app. Yeah, and we have our chat working here. We have logged in. The socket chat is my name here, and we can type a message here. Hi. But for now, nothing happens. So I would go to chat, but let me close these ones because I don't need them anymore. Great. On the key up, if key is enter, we would call the onSend function that we will write in a minute. We would do the same for the button. So onSend and onSend for both of these. Let's write some simple onSend functions so we get rid of these errors here. Okay, for now I'm just setting my message back to an empty string so that I know that the buttons are working. If I go and type something like this and press enter, the message goes away. Great. Now let's the actual onSend. In order to do that, we need to get use of the socket that we have here. And the thing that we need to do is to send some data using this. So we would call the send function on the client, which is our WebSocket. Then we can send the data that we want. As we are expecting UTF-8 on the server, we can use the stringify to stringify all the values that we want to send. So we use this and then we send the data inside. We can send the type message so that we can get it here when the message arrives. Then the thing that we need to send is the message itself and the username that has sent that message. So let's include those two as well. Now let's go and see if we get anything on the server. So if I go here and say hi and enter, if I go here, I'm getting the message. Yeah, received message is something like this. And we are sending the message back to the only client that is connected, which is ourselves. Great, so this part is working fine. If I go back here, I need to receive the message here as well. In order to do so, we need to use the onMessage as we have on the server part here. Something like this. So let's go here. And this should be on the use effect because as we log in, we need to be able to receive the message even before we write something because our friend might send something to us. So let's include that in the use effect. Okay, so something like the server, when the message arrives, do something. But beforehand, let us see that if we have a connection connected or not. In order to do so, we would use the onOpen method on the client. So something like this. Okay, great. Now for the onMessage, when we get the message, we need to first see if it's our message or our friend message. Okay, now let's see if we get the data from the server. Say hi. And yeah, we get the data. So the type is message is this one, and the username is me. Great. So when we send the data, the WebSocket returns it back to us and to the other clients as well. So to test that, let's have two users connected. Okay, now we have two connections. In this one it's Amir, and in the other one it's his friend. Now if I here say hi, I should get it in both tabs. So I get it here and I get it here as well. Great. Now the remaining thing is that we need to differentiate between our chat and show it like in this part and the friends chat and show it on this part. Great, so let's go and do that. Let's first get the data part like so. I'm parsing the message.data using the json.parse and I'm getting a get object out of that. So basically parsing this value. Now when we get the data, we need to store it so that we could render it here. In order to do so, we need to have a state for the messages. So up here, I would have another state called messages and set messages. At first it's empty, and it's an array because we have a number of messages. And then down here, we can add the current message to the list of the message that we have. So something like this. We are getting the messages, whatever the messages were before, and then add the current message to this. The message is this one and the username is this one. And this is critical because using this we can differentiate between the messages that we send and the messages that our friend sends. So this is for the use effect, and this is for the unsend. Now we need to get use of these messages because we have declared it but we have not used it. So here between the title and form we can render the messages. So let's go and do that. Make some space here. So we would map each of the messages to be a div. Now we can include the data inside this div. So first let's give it a class name of the messages, and then we would have a bunch of data inside. So let's do it like this. The message would have a username and then the message itself. So I would have a h4 to include the username, saying that this username has said this, and then a p to say what he said. Okay, let's go and see. Great. Now if I say hi here, I'm getting the message here, and I need to take care of the key prop as well. Here in the messages, let's give these some key as well, like so. Now we should get rid of the error that we had. So Amir and says hi, and the hi is showing here. Great. We can add an avatar here in the left part of each chat, so to say. In order to do that, I would add something here, and I'm getting the first character of the username, convert it to uppercase and show it in this section, and the rest of it is done by the CSS. So here I have the same thing. Here I would say Amir, and here I would say friend. Now here I would say hi. This one will receive it and he would say hello. Now if I go here, both of them are in the same column, which is not correct. One of them should be here and one should be here, like all the chat applications that we have. So that is basically can be done by some CSS magic. So let's go to our app, and in the chat, I don't need this. Let me close this one. And here, after the message, we could check to see if this is us or if this is our friend. So we are doing a ternary if the username that we have on the local is the same as the username that has been provided by the message, then we need to move it to the right. Otherwise, it should stay on the left. Okay, let me check this one. Let's go to the elements. This is getting flexed and that this is getting flexed. They need to be wrapped inside another div that I have. So this part, all of this part should be wrapped inside the div, which is called the messages, which is the wrapper for all of these map function. Like so. Now we have the messages. Okay, now let's go and refresh everything. So if I go here, refresh, and here refresh, here I would say friend has logged in, and here I have logged in. Now if I say hi, how are you today? These are what I have been written, and my friend has received these, and he would say hello. And I can see hello here as well. He would say doing great. What about you? and I can answer him here as well. So yeah, this is the basics on creating a socket and using it with React. We could also add many other features, like when we start typing, the other guys see that we are typing here, or any other stuff that we want. But that's for another video. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and see you in another video.